Hello everyone, if you had trouble learning how prompt flow works, like me, you're in the right place. In this video, I'm going to cover how prompt flow works. Now prompt flow is a feature in Azure AI Studio, and if we go into the Azure portal, we have this new resource type called Azure AI Studio. You can just simply create an Azure AI Hub. It's no different than creating any other Azure resource. I'm not going to do that in this video. After you creating an Azure AI Hub, you can create multiple projects. So this is the architecture of Azure AI Studio. So basically you create this hub resource, and then within that hub resource, you can create multiple projects. I have already created this AI hub resource. Let me go back. I have this resource, and if I click here, I can open the AI Studio. And from here, I can create multiple projects. And we have this structure. We have this one hub multiple projects structure. Is because your IT pros can provision the hub resource, and you can experiment with multiple projects simply. And the IT pros can also configure the security, governance, compute, and all that at once. And then you have the flexibility to add and experiment with multiple projects. So I'm in Azure AI Studio, and if I go into, I'm going to create a new project. Let me call it Pizza Bot 1. Right, and the hub is this AI hub resource I have already provisioned. I'm going to go into that project now. And as you can see on the left, we have a lot of features. We have model catalog, model benchmark, chats, image, completion playground, and all that. I have covered most of these in my OpenAI playlist. Go and watch that if you haven't. And the focus of this video today is prompt flow. Now with prompt flow, you can build intelligent applications, you can automate business processes using intelligent agents in the middle. So basically you can use LLMs and you can run code at the same time in one chat request and response. So that is the idea behind prompt flow. So we have three options here. We have the standard, chat flow, and evaluation flow. I want to start with chat flow to give you the idea behind prompt flow. So first we have to create a new flow. I'm going to call it pizza ordering flow. As you can see on the right, we have this graph UI. The graph contains three nodes. As you can see, we have the input node and the chat node and the output. As you can see, when I click on these nodes, the left side, it just scrolls to the configuration of each of these nodes. Now if I click on inputs, so this is the input section, as you can see, and if I click on the outputs, this is the output section on the top. So we have the inputs and the output section configuration on the top. And for each of the nodes that we have one section. We have only one additional node here. And if you look at this node, and if you're familiar with language models, we have the system message. We have this syntax here. This is a for loop for each item in chat history. It's gonna paste them here. This is the syntax that is being used for writing think of this as a prompting syntax. And as you can see, we have this user section and we have the question here. And if you look below, these are the inputs to this. We have the question, we have the chat history. And if I want to add another input here, new input, and then what I have to do is I have to validate and pass. I can't do that until I start a compute session. I'm going to click this button to start a new compute session that takes 1 or 2 minutes to start. What you're building here is an application. It's basically a Python application. It has LLM invocations and some Python code running. So to run this Python code, we need some kind of a compute service. So that's what we are spinning here. You can have managed compute where you keep a virtual machine running, or you can start a serverless compute session. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm starting a serverless compute session. All right, as you can see, the compute session is running now. If I just validate this node, it's going to generate the UI for the inputs. So based on the text that you have here, it's going to change the UI after clicking this validate and pass button. I'm going to get rid of that new input text field and then click on validate and pass input again. This is the first thing that you have to understand. So we can change the prompt and you can validate it to generate the inputs. Now let's start chatting with this service. We can click this button here to start chatting. I'm just going to say hi. When you do that, it's going to say, I need a large language model to run this LLM node. So this is a LLM node, and you can have, as you can see, you can add multiple nodes here. It could be a LLM node, it could be a prompt, it could be a Python code execution. Now I'm going to set a deployment. I have deployed 2 models, as you can see. I'm going to select this node here. If I go into the deployment section, you'll be able to see there's deployments that I've done. So the focus of this session is not deployments, it's just prompt flow. I'm gonna send a message. Since this is running in the debugging environment, it takes some time to generate the output. After writing our prompt flow, we can do the deployment, and then after that, it'll give you really fast responses. All right, as you can see, we have the response, and if I go back to this chat UI, now this is the second most important thing that you should understand. Now, for each message that we send, like for example this hi, it's going to run this whole flow. For each message, it's going to execute the whole flow, and that's the second thing that you have to understand. The first thing is input-output mapping, and the second thing is this the whole flow execution for each message that you send. All right. So now what I'm trying to build here is a pizza ordering chat, right? So let's just add a prompt here, right? Let's just start to do some prompting. Let's add you are a pizza ordering bot. That's you do, nothing more. Pizza types available, meat lovers, pepperoni. So these are the pizza types that are available. Let's add another one saying these are the pizza sizes available. I'm including all that in the prompt itself. Now let me run this flow and let's see how it works. I'm just gonna start a new session. I'm just gonna say hi. Right, as you can see, it's asking me the type of pizza I'd like to order. You have meat lovers, cheesy and pepperoni. So it works. Now it's not asking like how can I assist you today, because it knows that your bot is only doing the pizza ordering work. I want this node to get all the necessary data. As the next step, I want to run a Python code to create the order. Now I have already some API created. So I have this API. So what this will do is that I have this API. Let me scroll down, place the order. I want this Python code to invoke this endpoint after it collecting all the data. So that's what I'm going to do. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a Python code. I'm going to call it place the order, right? I'm going to add that. Okay, so this chat node, it is the LLM node. It's going to collect all the information and it's going to send us an output. So the output should be a JSON. I don't want this large language model to output a natural language response so that it's not easy for this Python node to understand it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go into this chat node. I'm going to change the response format to JSON object, right? And then I'm going to give it a few examples here like this. So this is a few short learning example. The sample JSON is, so this contains few parameters, as you can see, have all the info for ordering. So this is the conditional change that I'm going to do. So this node will decide whether it has all the info it needs to place the order. And if it has any follow-up questions, it's going to add that here, and it's going to add the type and the size as well. So I have all that ready, and I'm going to add this important point. You always, so that model knows that it has to send me a JSON output every time. So now let me just start chatting again. I'm just going to say, I need a meat lovers. So this node, I haven't configured this node, but I'm going to send this anyway. All right, as you can see, if I don't have all the info here, it won't run. So I'm just going to remove this. I'm just going to configure the activation. I'm just going to add this chat output if it is bool and false. So basically what I've done is I've deactivated this node, and I'm going to send the message again. As you can see, it's giving me this output. It didn't give me a natural language response. It's just giving me a JSON. So I have all the info: false, follow-up question, what size you want this pizza to be. So I asked meat lovers. Now it's asking me another follow-up question: what size? So I'm going to say, I need a medium one, right? I'll send it anyway. So the idea is that I'm forcing this LLM invocation to output JSONs all the time, so that my Python code can make decisions based on that JSON. As you can see, this is the output. I have all the info true, and we have the type and the size parameters ready as well. As you can see in the UI, we have the input, chat, and the output, and I have some other things connected. Now what happens with this is that it's going to execute both these nodes together parallelly, but I have bypassed it, so it won't be executed. So this is the idea of this configuration here. Now what we have done is this endpoint now giving us a JSON output. The next thing that we should do is that pass that into this thing here, this Python code execution node. It's a really easy thing to do. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click here, and then I'm going to use the chat output, right? Chat output as the input. And the next thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to change the output. I don't want the output from this node here, right? The output, I'm going to configure that to use the place the order, the output from the place the order node. As you can see, we have the flow in place. It's going to, this is a LLM invocation node. This is the Python code running. So I have passed these inputs correctly. The next thing I have to do is I have to call an endpoint to create the order if all are ready. I want to use ChatGPT to generate this code here, the public ChatGPT. I'm going to copy this code. Let me go into ChatGPT and create a new chat, and then the existing code, right? I'm just going to paste that, and I know the response, this output. So this is the input 1, and it's a text, right? I want you to invoke the endpoint. So I'm going to give the endpoint. So this is the endpoint to placing the order. I'm going to copy that. Endpoint the order. If have all the info is true, on that with a post request and pass the JSON to that. Otherwise, you just return the follow-up question. All right. The input 1 is a text JSON, not a dictionary. Okay, I want to give more information, so I asked ChatGPT to write my code. All right, as you can see, it's reading the text input, and there's the if logic. If it has that, if it has a true here, it's gonna invoke this endpoint and just return the response. Otherwise, it's just gonna return this output. And go back to the prompt flow. I'm just going to paste the Python code that ChatGPT wrote for us. I'm just going to remove the example usage. All good. All right. Now I'm going to validate the validate and pass input. Seems like it's valid, and I'm passing the chat output directly to this thing here. Let me start a new session, and I'm just going to say hi. It has executed everything perfectly, and if you look at the outputs and inputs, now as you can see, this is the input that we have received into this place the order node, and it has done its job, right? It has executed the job, and it's just giving me the follow-up question. And if I click see the output, as you can see, it just returns the follow-up question, the have all the info that is false. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say place an order for medium meat lovers pizza. So it doesn't have to ask any more follow-up questions. It's gonna send all the info that it needs, right? As you can see, order has accepted, message your order has been accepted, and it's being prepared. All right. So now if I just go into the this pizza service, this UI here, and click refresh, as you can see, I have received a request. So basically the prompt flow has invoked this endpoint with all the information that we have given. It has done the API invocation for placing the order. We have basically deployed our first prompt flow application. We have taken the inputs, and we have used the large language model to make the decision for us. So it's going to ask follow-up questions. And the important point is that this if condition here, it's not going to create the order until it has all the data, and that decision is taken by the large language model here. So that's the cool thing with these services. They can basically think like a human. They can continue to ask follow-up questions until it has all the data. Now let's make this a little bit more interesting, right? As you can see here, what I've done is I have just hard-coded the values, the pizza types, and all that. The next thing that I want to do is that I want to get this dynamically from a database. Now, what is the thought process? Now for that, I need to have another Python code running to get the data. I already have the endpoint, so this is the endpoint that I'm going to use for it. As you can see, this has like all the options. And if I go into the JSON formatter here, so these are the options that are available: margarita, pepperoni, the sizes, the toppings, and all that. So this is the output from this API invocation. Let me go back and add another Python node. I'm going to call it get pizza options, right? All right, I'm going to add that node, so it's going to be added to somewhere in the UI. So now what we have to do is we have to make sure that this node runs before this node, because in this node, this chat node, we have already hard-coded some values. I'm just going to get rid of them. Like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this input. So this is how we add an input: pizza options JSON. This is the input. And if I scroll down and click this validate and pass input button, it's going to read the content that they have here, and then it's going to add this thing. And I can just select the get pizza options.output. All right, as you can see, I've selected that, and the UI has suggested. So we have the inputs and the pizza options, all these inputs here to process the chat node. So we have done that. And now if I go into these pizza options, it's just the default code. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to use ChatGPT to write the code that we need for us. I'm going to modify the same prompt that I've used earlier. It's just the same default code. And then what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to ask it to invoke this endpoint, and then modify code it this endpoint, and then return the output as a string. So I'm just going to run this code. As you can see, the code is ready. I'm going to copy that. I'm just going to go into prompt flow, and then I'm going to paste it here. We don't need this input as well, and so I'm just going to remove this. I don't have any inputs for this flow, so I'm just going to delete that. I'm just going to validate and pass the input here. As you can see, we don't have any inputs for this get pizza options, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run the flow. So basically we have done all the configurations, and now I'm going to run the flow. I'm going to start a new chat session and say hi. All right, as you can see, it has done the endpoint request. Now it's giving me margarita, pepperoni, all that. And if I go into the endpoint locations, and if I refresh this, as you can see, it has called the get pizza options dynamically, and it's giving me the values. So this endpoint, it could be connected to a live database. So that's the idea behind it. So I have basically getting dynamic data for my pizza bot. Let's do a full run through. I need and it's gonna ask all the follow-up questions. What size you want this pizza to be? A large one. Do what? And then I'm gonna ask another question. What topping options do I have for this pizza? Let's see if this LLM node can think like a human and collect all the information. Yeah, as you can see, I have these options here: basil, tomato, and mozzarella. So this is actually, and if I go into this the JSON formatter, here we have the margarita, basil, tomato, and mozzarella. These are right information. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go with basil. All right. Now the next thing that you should keep in mind is that, as I told you earlier, for each message, it's going to run the whole the flow. So basically, it's going to invoke this endpoint, this get pizza options endpoint, each time we ask a question. That's an important point. As you can see, it collected all the information that it needs, and the order has been accepted, and I'm getting your order has been accepted and placed. Now if I go into this pizza service, and if I click refresh, as you can see, we have the place the order message received. And if I go into request body, as you can see, we have the type margarita, size large, and we have a toppings array as well, price as well, because we are returning the price also. So So now we have configured a full application. We have developed a full application using prompt flow, and let's try to do something even more cooler. And that is, if you look at the response here, right, it's giving us a JSON, right? But that's not usually how chatbots respond. It should be a natural language response. A question for you: what type of node should I add for doing that work? Is that a Python node or a large language model, or what is that? It's going to be a large language model node. So I'm going to add this LLM node. I'm going to name it format the response or something like that. And as you can see, it's not connected. What it should do is it should so basically this is the input that we can provide to it. I'm just going to ask you read, you understand the JSON, and then I'm going to provide an input, and this is the order placing output, right? And then I'm going to validate this node, and this is that node here, and it's going to identify the inputs, and this is the input. I'm going to map the output from the place the order output node like this. I mean, if we just allow it to be like this and execute it, both of these nodes will be executed parallelly, and that's not what we want. What we want is that this node to be executed and this one. So I'm going to go into output section, and that is on the top, and I'm going to change this to format the response like this. So this is the whole flow. We have the inputs, right? And we have the get piece options as well. And this is the intelligent agent node. And when everything is ready, it's going to place the order and format the response and then provide the output. I'm going to go into the prompt flow chat UI. I'm going to start a new chatbot. I'm just going to say place the order, and I need a small pizza. I have all the information I need. I'm just gonna send that. As you can see, there's an error, and that is format the response node. It needs a large language model. I'm gonna select that connection, and I'm gonna select GPT-4o and response format. I'm just not gonna say change that. Okay, I've done the configuration, and then I'm gonna send the message. So let's see what happens. It doesn't have to ask any follow-up questions now. It should ideally place the ordering and send me the response in a natural language. Let's see how it goes. So, okay, here's the mistake I made. So this node here, this is a LLM invocation node. So there's a specific way that we should format the prompt. I'm gonna go into this chat node here, and then I'm gonna follow its format. I'm gonna copy all this, and then I'm gonna go into this one, right? And let me change the format. So it has to be, there should be a system message. I'm just gonna change all that. This example, I'm just gonna delete all that as well. I haven't prepared for this part of the demo, so let's see how it works. It has all the chat history information as well, and the current question that user has asked. I don't actually think that it needs the chat history as well. Let me just get rid of the chat history. It has the system message and the JSON and the question, the last question that the user has asked. Let me validate it. The question, I wanna use the inputs.question. All right, so this is the current UI. This is the current configuration. Let's see if it works. I'm gonna copy the same message and I start a new chat session, and then as you can see, now I'm getting a natural language response. Your order for small margherita pizza with basil tomato has been placed. The order status is accepted. Here's the message from the restaurant as well. So it's really cool. Now if I go into the endpoint, let me see whether I have received that. I'm just gonna refresh the logs, and I have the get pizza options called. And then after a few seconds, as you can see, I have the request body, the mark for margherita pizza received. So this is what I wanted to cover in this video. The key things that you should keep in mind is that this is the high level, the flow of the messages. For each message that you send, the whole flow will be executed. And if you click on any of these nodes, there will be the configuration section appearing. And when you click on this input button, it's going to regenerate the UI, the input fields here, and you can assign the output. This context is available. And based on these assignments, the UI, the graph will be regenerated, and the tool is really powerful. As you can see, you can do amazing stuff with it. There's one more thing that we can do. We can simply deploy the flow like this. I can change the name of the endpoint or the deployment, and I can select the virtual machine that this is going to be running on. I'm going to change this to a bigger version like this. I need one instance, and then I'm going to go next. You can configure the authentication as well, and then I'm going to go ahead and create the deployment. After doing the deployment, you can connect this endpoint with any UI that you have. And what you may have noticed is that this UI here, it's kind of slow, but after doing the deployment, it's not going to be slow. And if you go into this deployment section, and the deployment will be shown here. That's basically what I wanted to cover in this video. If you have any questions or comments or any video suggestions related to this, let me know in the comments down below. You can subscribe to the channel if you learned something new today. I will see you with another video like this soon, and thanks for watching.